Good morning, good evening, good night, NBN, Entrepreneurship and Leadership.
Personally, I'm fascinated by the story.
Trust is an underrated weapon in the business landscape.
I'm a really, really strong believer in learning by doing.
What's the definition of success?
You're trying to come up with an answer to the question. But go ahead, Richard.
You could be right, but you're wrong. Good morning, good evening, good night, whatever time of the day it is or night it is, Entrepreneurship and Leadership listeners on the NBN. I'm here with my business partner, Kimon, and a very special guest, David Regn. David, rather than me trying to introduce you, why don't you introduce yourself the way you like to be introduced, imagining you've bumped into someone at a business networking event or indeed a party?
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me. Name is David Regn. I am the co-founder and CEO of Stream Companies and Full Throttle. So Stream is a integrated advertising agency serving the mid-market companies, and Full Throttle is the leading first-party identification and ad tech solution when it comes to being able to help brands and agencies build first-party data for their clients and then activate that across numerous DSPs and ad platforms in the world.
And maybe for people who aren't specialists in that industry, what's a DSP?
A demand service provider. So, some of the big DSPs that people might be familiar with, Trade Desk, is a huge one in the advertising industry. Certainly, people know Google in Facebook. So there's a lot of ad inventory in those platforms.
Fantastic. And can you give a sense of the scale of your business? We know you've been in business for more than 20 years, but in terms of the number of people, or I don't know if you disclose your revenue, just sort of some sense of how large your company is.
Yeah. So, at Stream, we've got about 500 employees. And Full Throttle, we have about 100. And the collective entities will do about $225 million this year in revenue.
Okay, and for anyone listening who doesn't realize, that means that David would probably have plenty of other things to do other than talk to us. So we're going to be very appreciative, of your time. And one follow-up question before I hand over to Kimon: that when you were growing up and you were a kid, like even before college, did you ever imagine that you might be doing something like this at this stage in your life? And did you have come from an entrepreneurial family, or would your 15 or 10-year-old self have been astonished to discover that in 25 years' time you're doing what you're doing now?
No, I think that I always had an entrepreneurial, light. I came from, an middle-class family where my dad was a mailman. My mom worked for a supermarket chain. So I had the great opportunity at the age of 14 to go to work for that same supermarket chain, Acme Markets. I
remember Acme. Is that an East Coast? Is that an East Coast thing? Is it?
Yes, an East Coast thing. That's correct.
Okay, because I grew up in New Jersey, so I went to the Acme.
Yes. So went to work at Acme at 14. Started as a bagger, and a week later, I approached the store manager and said, "Hey, you have these bakery racks around the store. It doesn't look like you're doing much with them. Can you tell me about them?" He told me that they get these frozen bakery goods in, they thaw them and they put them out. I said, "Well, I think we could probably do some more business." And he said, "Okay, well, show me what you can do." And about a month later, I was running our thaw and sell bakery at the age of 14. At Acme, and it was when I started doing about $300 a business a week, and then I think when I left, so I was at Acme for over 5 years. We were doing over $3,000 a week in thaw and sell bakery goods.
So wait, what was the basic improvement? What was the basic thing that you spotted in their inefficiency or whatever they were doing?
So I was just again watching people go through the supermarket. And the way that they had the racks positioned, I was like, I don't know that they're in the best positions, etc. So, I didn't know anything about floor plan or merchandising at that point,
right,
other than just watching people's behavior. I said, hey, we move these here and do that. And by the way, it seems like everyone wants the blueberry muffins, so we need more of those. So, just basic observations. And to be honest, I was like, didn't want to bag groceries because it was not fun.
Right.
So, yeah, so that looked much cooler to me. So
I think there's a tremendous lesson here for our listeners that I knew as an age of 14, obviously your upbringing led you to be self-confident enough to approach the boss and make a suggestion, but it's quite extraordinary how many opportunities are just there if you're ready to go to people with ideas. And many bosses wish that many of their employees were more enterprising and coming up with ideas than they are. And what's the worst that can happen? Maybe he'd have said no and you'd still be bagging groceries, but at least you tried.
That's a great point. The worst that can happen is no. That's the worst.
Exactly.
And I think people get frozen in rejection versus what someone could actually say yes to. So I think that's a tremendous lesson. And I think it talks just about that grit and that mentality of just always pushing forward.
And was that your first business when you were 14? And or had you been doing lemonade stands even before then?
I had worked. That was my first full real job. And funny enough, Acme was unionized, so I was in the union. I didn't know what a union was, so but it wasn't. I'd done some part-time landscaping for a family friend's business, etc. Helping out on the weekends. But Acme was my first real job, and I had that from my freshman year in high school to my freshman year in college.
Yeah, and I know Kimon did this as well, but I'd say for people listening, particularly international non-Americans, it's really common in America for teenagers and even quite young kids to do jobs. And, I was lucky enough that when I was living in a village in the countryside, even at the age of 10 or 12, there was like potato picking. There were different things you could do. And I think you learn a great deal from a job. Just, you don't necessarily realize what you're learning. But even just things like it's really nice to be paid at the end of the week, getting, even if it's only a few dollars, it's a very nice feeling when you're a kid, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. I think for me, it was always about that goal setting, right? I wanted to get that job because I wanted to save. So when I turned 16, I could have a car, and that car was a gateway to freedom and other things. So that was
what'd you get?
That was definitely what I was focused on.
What car did you get?
1987 Chevrolet Blazer.
Nice.
And by the way, how old are you now? Just to give a bit of context, because we can see you.
I'm 48.
48. Okay, so you're doing well for your age.
Yeah, so I would like to comment actually on that because I actually did have a very similar whatever. I grew up in New Jersey, and I did also lots of jobs, and I do think that I do echo that. One thing that you just sort of said was that you didn't want to do the bagging, and like I worked in a factory, like the real hardcore, like doing like all the crappy things in a factory. And that's actually there was nothing good. There was nothing entrepreneurial in there. But what was good was I never, ever want to work in a factory. Like that's like, there are really jobs that you just don't want to do. And when you're young, I mean, getting that opportunity to see, and then like the other thing is hustle, because and lots of other, like I had a flower delivery job or other jobs where I could like, if I was like, I don't know, more efficient or something like that, I got better ROI. I got like more, like I was just done work and I had more money faster and all that stuff. So anyway, so talk us through this, like so then what next? So like you went to college and so you stopped Acme, I guess. Is that what happened? You went to college?
Yeah, I went to college and went to college, local to where I grew up, and had the pleasure of playing collegiate lacrosse. So
played lacrosse as well.
I needed a job that was more flexible than Acme. So, I had a great job through college that was flexible. I worked at a beer beverage store, throughout college. And then, while I was in college, one of my best friends and business partner, Jason Brennan, and I, both had internships. My late in my junior year and his sophomore year in college. And I was working for, at the time, it was Dean Witter, which was later acquired, by Morgan Stanley. He was working for a marketing company. And I think both of him and I both realized, like, hey, we're best suited to work for ourselves. So we started out, helping some friends and friends of friends, with their marketing. How to just better promote their business, whether it was simple things like brochures or doing some radio partnerships. So that was the beginning of Jason and I's true business. We also had a side business, that we sold T-shirts to high school students. So we did that for beer money and food money. Him and I have been in business together for 27 years. It was born out of that experience we had together in college, and ultimately again realizing we didn't want to do something, and that was working for a big corporation. So we started toying around with the business, helping a couple people, got a couple of clients, and then kind of it just started from there. And that was the
so like basically it was consulting at the beginning. It was would you like classify more as like consulting or like helping somebody with their marketing, like strategy and stuff like that?
And it was basic, like, hey, I'm a landscaping business. How do I get more customers?
Right.
Hey, I'm a physician. How do I get more patients? I mean,
and hold on a second. This is back before. I mean, what were you like? You're helping them position them in the yellow pages. I mean,
Absolutely. Like, we had dial up, right? I mean, right. AOL, right. Dial up. Jason had I mean, it was very slow. I mean,
these are the 90s. I mean, we're in the 90s now, right? These are the 90s.
So we're in 1996.
Yeah.
Okay. And just to ask a question, when you were I want to hear about how you got your first client, but obviously you weren't a great marketing specialist with a CV and a resume and a track record. And so when you got your very first client, how did you approach the business of persuading someone to give a project to you when basically you were a new kid on the block and there were probably lots of other people who were like 45 years old who who were potentially a better vendor for the same thing because they were more experienced than you were?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So twofold. My business partner and I are both lifelong learners, from young ages. So I think we were, always out there, seeking information, reading the Wall Street Journal, business magazines, those types of things. So I think we just had an understanding of business, both through our other jobs in high school, in college, but it was more they were networks, and friends of the family, right? So it was more about talking to them, hey, this is how we think you might be able to improve or grow your business. How are you communicating, with the one was a landscaper. So how are you communicating with when you go see a prospect? Do you have materials that you're leaving them on the services that you provide? So, simply, helping them put those materials together. Our other first client was a physician, and he had a orthopedic practice and a physical rehab practice. And again, his wasn't getting his physician, his orthopedic patients into his, physical therapy. So helping him do that, helping him get awareness. It was two people that they didn't really understand marketing at all. So, we seemed knowledgeable, even though we didn't have much experience at that time.
You were a relative expert. And what was your business model? How did you say we'll charge you X for doing Y? I mean, because you said you weren't exactly consultants, you're more like service delivery.
I would say the first one was gratis, just helping them out so we could learn the landscaping. And then the other one was we put a proposal together. That was our first real paying client. They were our client for, I want to say 20 years before they ended up selling their practice to a bigger provider. So they became a long-term client for Jason and I.
Yeah, there's another lesson out here for listeners, which is that David's first client wasn't a client because he did it for free, but he wanted, and like, if you think that you can help another person improve their business and you're young and you don't have track record, offering to do it for free is quite hard for them to say no to. And if you turns out you can't, then you've discovered very inexpensively that your idea was a bad idea. But if you can improve their business, then you've got a potential reference, and you believe then in it's much easier for you to sell it when you in your bones that you can do it because you've done it already, I guess.
Yeah. And I think just, for us, we had a passion for helping others grow their business. And that's stayed true, throughout our entire existence.
Okay, so just at that beginning, so obviously you had a client. It kind of proved to yourself you could do something useful. But were there sort of like important moments along the road where you saw that this could turn into a sort of more than $100 million a year business? Like the master.
Well, I certainly didn't think we thought it was going to turn into that at that point, but we did something that you mentioned, which is pretty funny now that you look back on it. We took out a listing ad in the phone book, the Yellow Pages, under marketing services. So, we were
big investment, ladies and gentlemen.
Sorry, I said don't use jargon terms. Can you explain what the phone book is for our younger listeners? And this is not a joke. I literally think that a 20-year-old may not know what a phone book is.
No, I don't think they do. So in the States, the telephone providers, whether it was Bell Atlantic or whomever it might be, would put out a book that was probably at that time maybe 4 or 5 inches thick, and it had everyone's household phone number in what they call the white pages. So it had David Regn, my address, and my home phone number, and then part of the book was Yellow Pages, which in the Yellow Pages was business advertisements for various, pretty much any service you could think about was listed in this book. So that book got delivered once a year to your home, and every family, had that book, because there was no, really at that time the internet was there. Some chat rooms and AOL Instant Messenger.
No, it was useful. The point is, it was actually a useful tool. Like, I remember using the phone book. Like, I wanted to find the name of the person, and you put your finger down, and it's like at this address, and there's like 3 of the same name.
Yeah, and imagine if your hot water heater broke or something, broke in your house. That's where you went. You went to the Yellow Pages to call a repair person. So
it's a sort of offline version of Google.
1,000%. So. We had the brilliant idea that we're going to take out our listing in the Yellow Pages and advertise our marketing services. So,
and what did you do for the phone number? Because I remember having similar crazy ideas. But one of the barriers was that you'd have to give an address, and if you didn't yet have an office did you have a mobile phone at that stage, or how did you do it?
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think we had a mobile phone for probably another year or two.
Yeah.
So what did you do? Did you have an office?
So we used my mom's house as our business address, and our phone. We got a phone number because you needed to have a business phone number in order to have a business ad in there. 610-644-8637. Still our phone number, still our business number till this day.
But if someone rang it, were you sitting by it hoping, or what?
Yeah. You had an answering machine, right?
Exactly.
Or if someone called during business hours, you could answer it. The brilliant thing was, not many people. Our phone was not ringing that much, right? But I remember one day in 1998, Jason and I were both sitting in the office, and the phone rang, and it was a company called Metropolitan Communications, which was sold Motorola two-way radio equipment. And the gentleman on the phone said, "Hey, I need a marketing plan, and I need it in a week, or else Motorola is not going to let me sell this product." The product was called Telerio. I'll never forget this. So that same day, I got in my car and drove about 15 minutes to see that potential client. It was a guy named Bob, and the owner of that business was Dale Petrovich. That was 1998. Dale Petrovich is still a client of ours and has become a great friend of mine. And that work that we did for Dale Petrovich on that marketing plan that he needed to sell this product from Motorola made it to a VP at Motorola, and we had no idea about what co-op dollars are. Co-op dollars, just for people that don't understand, are dollars that the OEM or the manufacturer gives businesses to promote their product. So they said, hey, we've got co-op dollars. Would you want to be a provider on our co-op program and provide the services you're providing to Dale to other Motorola dealers?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So Dale, that yellow pages rang. We went up there and our work got in front of Motorola. And Motorola, again, has been, that two-way radio business has changed dramatically, but they've been a client of ours for, since then as well. So
so was that it? I mean, was that like the aha moment? Was that the thing that
that was the moment that started putting money into our checking account every week.
Yes, because I mean, just so this is such a nice story, because sometimes you get lucky, but it's not an accident that you get lucky. That you did a good marketing. You got in the car and went to see an interesting sounding client the same day, which is a way that a small business can compete with a big business. Because if they'd sent that to such and such or some 15-person marketing company, they probably wouldn't have sent a managing director over to talk to a sales lead. But there's a stage at which you can do that. But the other thing is, like, Motorola probably, they easily might have had several $100,000 a year for that marketing budget, and they don't care. They just want good marketing plan, and they care in a sense. But for them it's small beer, but for you it's really quite a big budget. So how much did you manage to invoice out of that lead in the end, do you think?
So I'm going to tell you this story. It's an amazing story. So, like I said, he's been a client and a friend. He put us on retainer. I didn't even know what a retainer was. And we've helped each other out professionally and personally through the years. So he put us on a retainer for $1,175 a month at that time. And he continued to just send that check, even when we've done very little business or a lot of business, because we built an amazing relationship together. And I think that's the other lesson, that in any business, building amazing relationships creates, lifetime value, both professionally and personally. And that retainer that he paid us then turned into us, spending his co-op funds and not letting his co-op funds expire. So we were able to make additional, income off of that. From there, we parlayed that into other manufacturer relationships in the similar industry, which was, a great for us. And then we really got to learn. That was our first, time that we got to learn about marketing and become real marketers.
Hmm. Yes.
So you went to an adjacent, because that's always a really good. Like, we always do that in our business as well. Like you went to an adjacent, so you had success with Motorola. So you went to other companies like Motorola with the same types of problems, with the same types of marketing needs. And you offered.
So that bit, the what they called the two-way radio communications business at that time sold Motorola. They sold other systems, 911 systems, etc. A manufacturer called Zetron, Kenwood. So we learned about their co-op programs, and we replicated that model.
Exactly. And what Kim was saying, I mean, this is something that's really important. And it happened in one of my businesses where we were doing barcode systems, and it turned out there were barcodes on telephone invoices for various reasons to do with the way the banking system worked. And, once we got that first one, the next step, okay, who else does invoices like the phone companies? It's the water, the gas, the electricity. But you do one thing that gives you an insight into an opportunity, and then if you're swift about it and you get out to people, you may be much smaller and newer, but you're ahead of your competitors because they don't even realize that these co-op budgets exist, for example. So they don't see, and the opportunity isn't about marketing; it's about the structure of the market in that case, isn't it?
Correct.
So I don't know, where are we now in terms of like revenue? Like, cause I still have a feeling I want to understand. I called it already, like the aha moment, but I have a feeling that something must've happened something you must have identified something because, to go from 0 to 200 million is like, that even at 20 years, whatever, I suspect it was, I mean, maybe it was just slow and steady, but I suspect that there were some, some significant jumps along the way.
It was steady, right? Because we're going to finish our 26th year of year-over-year growth. But there were a couple of other aha moments that, I'll quickly share. Because we got traction and results with Motorola, that the network came calling again. That network at that time was my brother. And my brother owned, at that time, 5 World Gym franchises. World Gyms are health clubs in South Florida, and his business was growing. And said, "Hey, bro, I see you and Jay are really making a business out of this. You kind of know what you're doing. I need some help with my marketing. I've been doing it myself, but now we're running five clubs and a couple hundred employees, etc." So my brother handed over the keys to Jay and I to run his marketing, which was again that was direct to consumer marketing. So we again took that experience in terms of what we knew about the health club industry, given my brother's expertise and being in that industry, understanding like how far people will go for health clubs, and we took over his budget. We grew, he grew, we grew, because he went from five franchises to 12 before he sold his business. And we went from that probably at that point became our biggest retail spending client. So we had this, we were learning about retail, we were getting good at retail, and we were learning about co-op. The same time around this happening in 1999, we got referred to our first car dealer in the States here, a local car dealer that through a mutual acquaintance said, "Hey, I see you guys seem to be doing some cutting edge things. You're talking about the internet when no one's talking about the internet. You're doing these things. I have this car dealer I want to introduce you to." So same story. Got right in the car, went up and saw this car dealer. His name was Bill Latch, and met with Bill. Bill was spending $25,000-$30,000 a month on mostly newspaper advertising at the time, promoting at that time Dodge, Chrysler, and Jeep. And I said, "Hey, Bill, like, what are you getting? Like, what kind of results?" He's like, "I really don't know." And I said, "Okay, well, one of the things we could help you do is better track your advertising. Like, we can put a call tracking number on your print ads. We could do this." So we were able to earn Bill's business, and he was spending $25,000-$30,000 a month. He was a small car dealer. So, okay. And there was co-op involved, right? And we had understood this co-op knowledge from Motorola. So we were off to the races in the auto business.
Can you talk us a little bit about, because I just want to, because I'm actually, even just for myself to understand this. So when you keep talking about co-op, so basically this person has like whatever, $400,000 that they spend on the marketing, but it's because you're getting a piece of, how are you getting your, like, what's this co-op? Like, how do you get who's giving you?
Great question. So at this time, it's changed over the years, but at this time, so whether it was Motorola or Jeep, we would do the advertising, right? Let's just say a newspaper ad or direct mail piece. We would get the invoice. If it was direct mail, we get a postal receipt. And let's just say it was $10,000. So we would take all that paperwork, we would submit it to Motorola or Jeep, and then our client would get a check back based on how much co-op funds they had earned by purchasing cars or Motorola two-way radios, and they get reimbursed. So
that money went to, but who did that come? That money went to you then?
So at first it went to the client, and then the client paid us.
Right. Exactly.
We've
Okay.
evolved over years now where we've become certified on a number of different co-op programs.
Okay. So you could get it direct.
Yeah. But
okay, I got
it was paperwork.
No, but it does make sense because basically you're doing marketing for, I mean, that's great. That car dealer is going to sell cars, but you're ultimately marketing the car itself. So you're marketing Jeep or whatever. So that's why I'm trying now explaining to people listening. I mean, that's why they want to do this. I mean,
so that's why Jeep would give the dealer co-op money. Motorola would give the communications company because they were selling their products.
Yeah, and this still goes on. That one of my other businesses, we import products from American manufacturers, and one of them's Honeywell. And these big companies like Honeywell will say, like, if you're importing $2 million a year worth of their stuff, usually it's like sometimes it might be 1%. They say, oh, we'll give you $20,000 towards your marketing, and you just send them an invoice for the trade fair. You show them the invoice for the trade fair, and sometimes they match it. They say, we'll give you another 100% of what you spend up to, say up to $20,000, we'll reimburse if you spend $20,000. So then there's 40,000, and it makes sense for the manufacturers because, as Kimon says, you're promoting the Honeywell, and obviously they want to look at your advert as well, because if you use Honeywell's budget and then you don't put Honeywell logo on your trade fair stand, Honeywell get very upset about that. So there are rules and stuff, but the rules anyway.
Is there a ratio? Would you say there's a ratio? Let's say they're spending like 300,000 on, would there be like a ratio to the co-op? I mean, is it like 10 to 1? Is it
in the automotive world today? It's a percentage of invoice or a fixed amount per vehicle.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
And so you got into it. And so basically you were being good at old style marketing and just applying up-to-date techniques in the old world. And meanwhile, the internet revolution is tearing up the old way of doing things, and you're up to date. So presumably, as well as just old-fashioned things like having a referral code on a print ad in the media so you track what's going on with that print ad, you're also there at the beginning of the explosive growth of online marketing. And was that that must have been a huge opportunity for you?
Yeah, it's still, believe it or not, that probably came a couple years later. Still in '98, like most people were not, I would say it was in the 2000, the late 99, 2000 is when.
I mean, the .com thing was happening around 2000. The .com thing happened around 2000. So,
but believe it or not, a lot of the small businesses still weren't thinking about websites and digital presence and digital marketing. That boom, really happened post the .com bust.
And a separate question here, David, which is, you must have begun to start employing people, and like, as well as being good at marketing, you had there must have been a point at which you were no longer able to deliver all the things you were doing personally with your business partner. And can you share a little of your experience of taking people on, and what, how you found good people? Because, it's one thing to do it well yourself with your partner, but building a team that can deliver as well as you can, or even better than you can, is not necessarily the easiest thing to do. And so can you take us through some of the highlights of building the organization?
Sure. And it's going to go back to one of the reoccurring themes, networking relationships. So that same Motorola Metropolitan Communications client, one of the employees there had a daughter who was an art student at one of the local universities, who came to help, part-time with us, probably around, I would say 99, 2000, somewhere. Before that, we might have been, we were using some freelancers. Kate Heskett came to work for us, and she's still here 22 years later.
But that's not quite that. So that's attracting one person, but there's a difference. There's a difference in getting one, because, like, I mean, I really think for a lot of people, very entrepreneurial people, they're quite competitive. They're good at getting stuff done. But it's one thing to have that within you, but building a large-scale organization that is, not just great for the owners, but great for talented people to work in, isn't the easiest thing to do. And you've obviously done it. So
no, but the reason I really hone in on that is because I think it was who Jason and I were and who we are today, and that's deep rooted in culture. And I know that a lot of people talk about culture, but culture is something that you don't talk about. Culture is something that's built from within. And having Kate join the team and work her way up from a graphic designer to she's our chief administrative officer now. Just is one story of many stories of where we've brought on entry level talent with similar mindsets of people that are looking to do more. It's really been our one of our biggest points of success is really.
Let's take a sidebar and talk about this, because actually the most successful company that I founded, the first employee that I hired has also still works in the company, and it's also in the similar 20 plus. It's like it's a similar kind of thing. And I also strongly believe in culture, and I believe it. So let's just talk about this a little bit, because I think this is kind of useful and important. So like, what, from your perspective, what does it mean to build a good culture? Like, and how, like, what would you say has been your secret to, like, how do you make people want to work with you for long periods of time? And like, what has been your, like, why do you think it works? Like, what do you think it is about the way you guys do things that has made this like because this is a really, really undervalued and I think super important part of setting up a successful business.
Yeah, no, I think that, it's attributed to a tremendous part of our success. And we just had our holiday party last night. And I got to share some stories with people that I've never met in person. And it's truly, if you care about what you do and you're passionate about what you do, and then that translates into how you build relationships. And I keep going back to this word relationships because it's true. It's been part of our success in acquiring business and developing and cultivating talent. It's about building relationships and about caring. It's about passion. It's about love. And those things I think are so often undervalued in life. And I think, some people are afraid to talk about them, right? Because, that's corny. That's not how it really works. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, it's how it really works. And there's 17 people on my executive team, and the lowest tenured person is, 3 years. The highest tenured person is Kate at 22 plus years. And I think the average tenure is over 10. So that doesn't happen by, just being a job or just being a paycheck for someone. That happens
and
by.
I want to hone in on one word that you said there. I think it's actually care. But you actually do care. You actually do care. And then they know that you care. You can't fake care. Care is, do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's like, you can't fake it. Like, you actually really do care, and they know that you care. And that's part of the glue there that makes it work.
And as Kimon said, you can't fake it. And you see some of these huge companies, and I'm not going to name names because it would probably be illegal, but there are examples of these huge companies, and there are lots of them in Krakow in Poland, where Kimon and I started doing business together. Big international outsourcing companies. They talk about the X family, and you see the employees rolling their eyes because everyone knows it's BS because they call it, and you can label it, have all the right buzzwords and labels, but if it's not actually
exactly
in the heart of the people who say it, it's worse. It's even worse than not having it at all.
It is, and you'll rarely hear me talk that way to the team, because if you truly care and you truly love and you're truly passionate, you don't need to tell them that.
No,
they know that.
No, they see it.
Actions speak louder than words, right? And
yes, 1,000%. And that is deep rooted into our culture. And they watch how people behave, including myself and the executive team. And that's about, whether it's first in, last out, the toilet overflows. Do you pick up the plunger yourself, or do you look to somebody else? Jay and I we're going to pick up the plunger ourselves.
Totally.
And that's just a different mindset and mentality. I think that the other thing is part of caring is helping our team, unlock. We talk about our mission at Stream, and that is really to help unlock our client and our employees' full potential. And I think that's one thing that we strive to do, is really help people realize.
Yeah, and that's part about caring, because you care about the people. You want them to have interesting jobs. You want to have interesting lives. You want their lives to be good. You want their families to be good. That's all part of caring. And what's so interesting, just talking to you here about culture, and it's like, if you where does that show up on the balance sheet? How do you value that? How do you value that?
Here's what I'll tell you, and this has been an awesome experience. Jason and I sold part of the business to Samerica Capital in 2019, and you hear so many kind of indifferent stories around venture capital, private equity, etc. And I think a lot of times they're skeptical about when you talk about culture and what that means. But to me, how it translates to the balance sheet is growth and loyalty, and being able to go through the good times and the bad times. So, I've learned a tremendous amount about myself, going through those good times and bad times. And, COVID is a great example. Our business, plummeted overnight. So our revenue from March of 2020 to April of 2020 dropped 70%, just like that. In the States, most automotive dealerships were shut down. They couldn't sell cars, etc. So we had devised a plan in late February, because we saw this coming, and said, hey, listen, it's going to get tough. It's going to be a rough go. We don't know how long it's going to be there, but here's what we're going to do. This was before we had any government subsidy with unemployment, etc. We said, Jason and I aren't going to take any pay. Our executive team took just basically, we sat in a boardroom. I said, how much do you guys need to pay your bills? And it was a very modest amount, probably a quarter of what most of them were making monthly, if not a sixth. And we said, okay, the executive team is going to take that amount. Jason and I aren't going to take any pay. We're going to put all the rest of the company on what we call pay bands. So like trying to, affect, the people the least possible. But at the same time, we wanted to keep everyone employed. We did not want to furlough or lay anybody off. So we put that plan together. I went to the board. I said, hey, listen, we've been through 2008. We've been through 2009. Bad times won't last forever. Here's what we're going to recommend. Oh, and by the way, we want to pay everyone back when we're able to. So I think, to give you an idea, when an investor understands what culture means, without hesitation did our private equity partner and our board say, wow, absolutely. So
that's impressive.
It's impressive in terms of a couple reasons. It's one, because they understood what culture means. They understood what sustainability means. And they understood that we're not going to, our theme was, we're not going to leave any streamer behind. And that was the goal. And listen, delivering that news is probably the most difficult thing I've ever had to do in my career. And I think that, obviously we had probably had 10 people that were not pleased, outwardly angry, whatever it may be. The rest of the people said, thank you for caring about us, and thank you for making a decision that was not just based on the P&L right now. Yeah. So as all things happen, the states opened up, the dealers went to battle, and basically were able to open up, 3, 4, 5 months later. Our business certainly didn't rebound to pre-COVID levels at that time, but we paid all of our people back by the end of that year. All of those wages. We didn't lay off, furlough anybody. So to me, the moral of the story and what culture means is when you put the people before profits, and they know that. And ultimately, to me, that's what creates sustainability. That's what breeds awesome talent. That's not just about a paycheck, and that they're loyal to your brand too. So you're creating that bi-directional loyalty.
Yeah, I would actually add to that because you worked on that for a long time. I think that I like to call you made plenty of deposits in the bank of goodwill over the years, again and again and again. And then when the hard times came, because you sort of stated this, but when the hard times came, you had a whole bunch of your employees, even your best employees and all kinds of employees who were willing to take pay cuts, whatever the terms, whatever the conditions, they were ready to take pay cuts, but they were ready to do that because of you and the way you managed your culture. And, as I said, the deposits that you'd made, the previous goodwill deposits that you made, you were cashing in on that now. And of course, then you paid it back and it all, but, and there's trust, and there's also trust as an element of this as well. They trusted you for sure. So exactly. And just fascinating stuff, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say that obviously you'd built up a bank of trust as well as goodwill, and maybe talk about some of the tougher things, because you said that it was one of the toughest things you had to do in your business career, but and someone listening to this who hadn't done business themselves might think that, it's also nice. David's such a nice guy, Kim and Richard, they sound so nice. Can you give examples of tough when you had to be tough? Because I think having a good culture isn't always about being the nice, friendly guy. Were there examples where you had to be tough with clients, with employees, or difficult decisions? Because it's not all sweetness and life.
No, guys, as I said, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart.
Right, exactly.
It is not, and we make tough decisions, every day. But we've experienced, in our 27 years, some pretty crazy events. If you think about it, when you're in it every day, you don't do a lot of reflection on those things. But I remember driving into work on a beautiful sunny Tuesday morning, and my wife called, and my wife's an ER nurse, and she goes, "Oh my God, do you know what happened?" I said, "No, I'm driving into work," and she's like, "Well, a plane just hit the World Trade Center," and I was like, "What?" Yeah, at this point they didn't know it was a commercial plane. So I drive to work, and before I even pull in, she calls me again, and it's like, no, it was a commercial plane, etc. So, that was a time where there was so much uncertainty, and just that was my first time dealing with trying to reassure clients and our team, and just understanding what was going on. So, I mean, those are difficult moments. I mean, it was a difficult moment for everyone, I think, but just not understanding what was going on. And
when you're the co-owner and the boss, also sometimes people think you know more than you do, right? Because they look at you because you're the sort of the parent figures of the organization. Yeah. But in fact, the president of the United States didn't know what was going to happen next either. But I was thinking, maybe can you reflect a bit on processes that obviously to execute in a small organization with 5-10 people is one thing, but was there a point at which you had to sort of how did you develop all the processes? Because you're running a big organization now. Was it always learning by doing, or did at some stage you have to sort of bring in outsiders who'd done things like you were doing before? And because learning by doing is a little tricky as you get very big. If you've never
it was a lot of learning by doing in the early days, for sure. It was a lot of, not grit, right? Fortitude, grit, would get us through. But Jason and I do, there's definitely points. So one of those points is we brought in an outside consultant who had scaled, marketing firms and agencies. And we brought him in, and we might have been at, 15 people at that point. And I mean, fundamental things that, again, Jason and I we didn't have other careers in the agency business at this point. So we brought a gentleman named Bob in. Bob really, I think, helped us, take a step back and look at the business we have, and asked us well, Who do you want to be when you grow up, and those types of things. But fundamental things like, hey, are you guys tracking time for your per client and those types of things, which we weren't doing at that time. Like, listen, we were just getting the work done and, keeping our clients happy and all those things. So that was really when we started to put in those processes, around, around 15 people, right? Because that's when you just couldn't, all sit in a room and figure things out.
And I think there's a lesson for everyone listening, that it doesn't matter whatever your business is, from digging graves to putting pipelines under the sea, whatever you're doing, being aware of what you don't know, and like being aware of the fact that, at some stage you're going to need expertise that you're not going to have in-house. We did it in translation, and Kimon did it in translation in one of my other businesses. I was always looking for people who had done already what we were doing, and they might give you bad advice, but at least you've got a point of, because that's the other thing, you can't put all your faith in the outside consultant, can you?
No, that's a great point, Richard. You can't. I think it's a learning moment, right? And you want to take away those things that they either said were challenges in their business career and how they solved them. But I think the true moral of the story is never stop learning. Don't be afraid to get outside points of view. My recommendation is one of my things here in my team. I say, always get your weather from multiple sources. I think that's important, when taking business advice too, because you want different perspectives. You want to maybe look at how others are solving the problem and not just one person. And then you got to figure out how that fits into your business, into your culture, and not just put someone else's processes in your business that doesn't align with your values and your thought process.
And can you? I don't know if there's anything we're leaving out here. I'm sure there must be.
Well, I'm conscious about the time, and I'd still want to get the aha, there has to be like where.
So there's the big aha moment, like the aha moment that changed the financial trajectory of the business forever, was when we had that first automotive client. We understood how much money dealers were spending and how much we could impact that business.
So you guys really special? Would you say so it's because we don't know your business. You specialize in automotive. You specialize in dealerships. Has that been
So we don't just specialize. We have other clients outside of that, but that we got really, really good at it. Okay. Some of the largest publicly traded dealer groups in the United States are our clients. Okay. We've got partnerships with 20 OEMs, Ford, Stellantis, BMW, etc. in the business. Yes. So that catapulted our business into the stratosphere by understanding. So we parlayed that first auto client into a large dealer group, which was spending millions of dollars a year. And we just became experts. And we became experts by immersing ourselves in their business and understanding how all parts of their business work, their service business, their sales business, how to read a dealer financial statement that they send to the OEMs, the co-op.
Were there certain years that were like where you had to scale fast, like in the fast growth? Because that's always a challenge. Like, how do you? Because one thing is that's awesome that you have this opportunity, but how do you meet the challenge? I mean, it's just like,
so we did. We had to scale fast in 2002. Was a year where we probably doubled in size, right? Doubled. When you go from 15 to 30, like that's crazy. And then when you go from 30 to 60, that's crazy. And then like when I said that, for me, it was like, I think when we got to like over 200, then that was like, it's another level, right? Another processes, HR.
Oh my God. Tell me about it. HR. I'm involved. We have HR now. HR is like a whole nother.
So, but the aha moment was for that, part of the business. I know we're going to run out of time, so I can't even really talk about full throttle, but that was an aha moment. And it was a moment that we saw the huge opportunity from the transformation of what we, the traditional, the TV, the radio, the print to digital, and how do we position our business to be able to take hold of that. And that's really that's what we did. And we've become probably the leading automotive agency here in the States,
and there is
and
a
and Canada now as well.
Yeah. And there is a huge lesson for anyone listening that whatever business you're doing, sometimes you just get one new client and you think, how many more of this type of client are there? And it doesn't matter whether it's oil rigs or, just almost every industry at a national, or if you're in America or international scale, is just enormous. And so you just find you're really good at doing one thing to do with wristwatches or whatever it is. You think, wow, that's $100 million billion-dollar market. If you but you have to have your edge, though. You have to have some, and you have to know in your bones that a smart client would really like to do business with you because you're better at doing that thing than other people, because you've got some insight, or in this case, I guess it was the internet coming along and just applying old world techniques and new techniques. So jumping on, because time is running out, but just tell us about your decision to look for external capital and private equity. Where did that come from, and what can you share about that?
Yeah, no, I think one, it came from, in 2017, we were first approached by a strategic to purchase us. And that was just not the direction that, my business partner and I wanted to take the business. But, we were curious, right? And we didn't know what we didn't know. So we went out and said, okay, if we wanted to actually sell the business, what would we do? So we learned that you would hire an investment banker. So we hired an investment banker. We ran a process just to see, what valuations might be versus what the strategic was, proposing to us. During that process, we got to know a number of private equity firms. We didn't transact at that point, and then year and a half later, the same strategic came back with a even better offer. So we ran another process, and we had met Severica, earlier on, and again, we still weren't looking to do anything because the business again was, continuing to grow, and we said, okay, well let's just test it. Let's see what the valuation is. Is there any, at that time we're starting to think strategically, like, is there any big acquisitions we want to make? Is there anything that can help, the 1 + 1 = 3 or 5 or whatever number you want to apply to it. So we were thinking about that. So we were having some strategic conversations with a couple private equity partners around, acquisition targets, companies that were in the market. So it was getting us more excited, right? Because we were about, how do we grow? What's bigger? Those types of things. What are challenges for us as individuals that we haven't faced that we want to do in our career? But we did that. We had at that time we had a number of offers on the table. One of the kind of offers plus an acquisition fell apart. And then again, I think Jason, at that time, we felt really still great about the business. So we're like, we're not going to do anything. And that was late 2018, maybe. But I had stayed in contact with two of the private equity, Jordan, the managing partner, Richards at Severica. Him and I just kind of developed a relationship. So we stayed in touch. And about 2 months later, he just checked in and said, hey, listen, we really want to partner with you and Jason. We think there's a ton of potential and things we could do together. I know you guys have clients up in Boston. We're going to be in Boston. I think you can arrange, go see your client, have dinner with us. So we did, and they came to dinner with an offer, and that Jason and myself went back, and we've got another business partner, and we went and had breakfast that Saturday morning, and we're debating, contemplating, discussing the offer, and I said, hey, listen, there's 3 of us, right? So there's 3 votes. What do you guys want to do? And I'll never forget it. I say this, I tell this story all the time, is, my business partner said, hey, I don't think we'll ever regret doing this deal right now, right? Because we're going to take some chips off the table, everything we work for, our families will be, secure, etc. I said, well, hey, listen, what do you and Brian want to do? Vote. they said, let's do it. So, me again, I could have went either way because I, again, believe in what we're doing. But I also heeded, Jason's words is I don't think we'll ever regret this. And I'll tell you what, having done the transaction and then go through COVID made things mentally a lot easier.
Oh my God, for sure.
But
but this is so interesting for me personally, but also for the people listening. So like, what is the positives and negatives of like, so basically I'm just guessing, I assume you sold a majority share of your company. So
we sold 60%.
Yeah. So somebody else that has control.
With the understanding that, truly the understanding of like, not just, we talk to all their clients, et cetera.
Right.
Like this is your business to run. We're strategic. We're going to build a, independent board. We're going to provide capital. We're going to be able to go out there and make acquisitions. So, they've lived up to their promises.
And this has happened. You guys have you've gone out and done stuff like that.
Yeah, we've got a business under LOI right now. We got in the pipeline. We built amazing independent board members of gentlemen that have run Fortune 500 companies, including one being the CEO of a Fortune 500 company.
Nice.
Sits on multiple public boards. So we've got a really strong independent board network, a great private equity partner that believes in us, that believes in our vision. And to me, in a lot of ways, we're just getting started. So it's really fun and exciting. And I think that my advice to any entrepreneur that's thinking about whether it's venture capital or private equity capital, it's just really got to align with what your personal and professional goals are. It becomes even more difficult in some ways in terms of like, listen, now, if it was Jason and I relying on each other to grow the business, you're obviously doing it to support your employees, et cetera. But now you've got, investors and a board, that, you've got more responsibility. And you've got, a deeper sense of, helping, manage, all your constituents at that point.
Well, I think this has been an amazing journey, and congratulations. And from what you're saying, you say the journey is still the what's ahead is even more exciting. That you could be still doing this in 10 years' time and with an even bigger smile on your face and just looking. But the future sounds exciting. Is there anything that you haven't shared that you'd like, either about you or your journey or the company, that you think?
Or like last tips, like for anybody, like
just before we wrap up, because sometimes
listen, I'll recap a couple things because I think it's so underplayed and undervalued in business and life. A couple things. One is grit. If you do not have grit, you do not want to be an entrepreneur. I mean, because there's going to be bad days. There's going to be dark days. And that leads me into the next thing. You need a positive outlook and a positive attitude, because especially in the agency business, you're going to get fired a lot. It comes with the territory, right? And if you can't handle that, it's not something that is easy to then manage. That in your personal life. And you got to. Everyone says passionate and find your passion, but you can find your passion outside of work, but you need to be passionate about work. If you're not passionate about work, you're not passionate about people being your team members and your clients. Again, it's going to be a struggle.
Genuine. It's to be genuine. It's that genuine, to be genuine. There's a huge value of being genuine. I agree.
I wish I could credit the quote, but I heard just a few days ago, I heard someone say something amazing, which was, don't do what you love what you do. Like, if you don't enjoy doing what you do, you're not going to be a happy person. So you have to really enjoy what you do. Otherwise, you're kind of screwed, I think.
Yeah. And we have a saying here. It's etched into our floor in our office, and it's painted in the parking lot. That's do the ordinary extraordinarily well.
Very nice.
Very nice. And that's just, you got to get up, show up, and do the basics each and every day.
Well, I think that's a really great note on which to end. And I just would say, if you're ever traveling over to Europe, make sure I'd really like to meet you in person and take you out to dinner. It sounds like will you be expanding in Europe? Will you be acquiring people here? Do you think, or is that?
We're contemplating it because one of our clients does have a presence in the UK, so we're trying to better understand if there's opportunities out there. But I love Europe. My wife and I do. We try to go every year. See a different place. So it would be nice because then it gives me even more of a reason.
Fantastic. Well, Kimon, do you want to do the wrap?
Thanks, David, for your time. Really fascinating story. We interview a lot of people. For some reason, I have a lot in common with you. It's crazy to listen to your story. Like, it follows so many of the same sort of themes that went through my career as well. A lot of the things. So, I really enjoyed it, and thanks for taking the time. And that culture thing, guys. Don't forget that culture thing. That's the secret sauce. Let's leave it at that.
Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.